gopi jana vallabha giridharidhari. Jaya gopi jana vallabha giridharidhari. Yashoda nandana braja jana ranjana. Yashoda nandana braja jana ranjana. Jamuna tira vanachari. Jamuna tira vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Asto Tarasadashi Śrīmad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki. Prem se Gaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Se Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kundi Giri Govardhana ki. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki. Shri Mayapura Navadvitam ki, Shri Purushottam Kshetra ki, Shri Ganga Mai ki jai, Shri Jamuna Mai ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai, Harinam Sankirtana ki jai, Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Oh, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Buddhalesh Mati Buddhajana Prabhu Vachanamani. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Buddhalesh Mati Bhaktivedanta Swami Chanamani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharane Nivasesha Sanyavadi Paschatjante Satarane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 10, the Summum Bonum. Chapter 2, Prayers by the Demigods for Lord Krishna in the Womb. Text number 15. Garbhe pranite devakya Rohinim yoga nidraya Aho visram sita garbo Iti pora vichukrushuhu Garbhe pranite divyakya Rohinim yoga nidraya Aho visram sito garbha iti pura vichukrushuhu. Garbe pranite devakya rohinim yoga nidraya aho visramsito garba iti pura vichukrushuhu. Garbe pranite devakya rohinim yoga nidraya aho visramsito garba iti pura vichukrushuhu. Garbe pranite devakya rohinim yoga nidraya aho visramsito garba iti pura vichukrushuhu. Garbe pranite devakya yoga nidraya aho visramsito garba iti pura vichukrushuhu. Garbhe, when the embryo, pranite, was carried from the womb, devakyaha, of Devaki, rohinim, to the womb of Rohini, yoga nidraya, by the spiritual energy called Yoga Maya. Aho, alas, visramsitaha, is lost. Garbhaha, the embryo. Iti, thus. Puraha, all the inhabitants of the house. Vichukrushuhu, lamented. When the child of Devaki was attracted and transferred into the womb of Rohini by Yogamaya, Devaki seemed to have a miscarriage. Thus, all the inhabitants of the palace loudly lamented, "Alas, Devaki has lost her child." Purport: all the inhabitants of the palace includes Kamsa. When everyone lamented, Kamsa joined in compassion, thinking that perhaps because of drugs or some other external means, Devaki had undergone this abortion. The real story of what happened after Yogamaya attracted the child of Devaki into the womb of Rohini in the 7th month of Rohini's pregnancy is described as follows in the Hare Vamsa. At midnight, while Rohini was deeply sleeping, she experienced, as if in a dream, that she had undergone a miscarriage. After some time, when she awoke, she saw that this had indeed happened, and she was in great anxiety. But Yogamaya then informed her, "O auspicious lady, your child is now being replaced. I am attracting a child from the womb of Devaki, and therefore your child will be known as Sankarshan." The word Yoga Nidra is significant. When one is spiritually reconnected through self-realization, one regards his material life as having been like a dream. As stated in Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, text 69, Yanisha sarvabhutanam tasyam jagarti samyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sanisha pasyato munahe. What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-controlled. And the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. The stage of self-realization is called Yoga Nidra. All material activities appear to be a dream when one is spiritually awakened. Thus, Yoga Nidra may be explained to be Yoga Maya. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmaye Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Svapadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Garim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam. The occurrence of a miscarriage is a tragedy. Right? And so when Devaki apparently lost her seventh child, then everybody was lamenting, vichukrushuhu. Right? And right at the beginning of the purport, Prabhupada states, including Kamsa. Although Kamsa is described as being a demon, fickle, right? Fickle. And it's not mentioned whether he was lamenting for the fact that now the eighth child would be imminent, right? Imminent. But it appears for both Devaki and Rahini, this was initially a traumatic experience. Because it appeared that both had lost a child from the purport. It says that Rahini also had the same experience. But all of this, and the interesting, the environment or the circumstance within which these events were taking place are all auspicious, as we can see from the presence of Yogamaya, right? And that all of the movement of the personalities involved is ultimately to herald or to set the scene for Krishna's appearance in the womb of Devaki. And so it was Krishna's arrangement for his appearance. And of course, understanding all of these elements helps us appreciate the divya, the transcendental characteristics, divya karma. Jamma karma chame divyam. So these descriptions help us understand the transcendental nature of Krishna's appearance. And with the appearance of Sankarshan or Balaram, and also the appearance of Yoga Maya. You know, even though Krishna's activities appear to be human-like, right? Krishna is not at all bound or limited by the human form. He's a fully transcendent, the supreme person who appears in a human-like form. So the scene is being set for Krishna's appearance. There's been the six sons of Kalanimi, representing the mind and the products of the mind. Almost the enemies of the spirit soul, right? The what is it? Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moha, etc. have been destroyed. And now Lord Balaram has appeared in the womb of Devaki, and he's then set the scene for Krishna's appearance from the pure conception of the Lord in the mind of Vasudeva, which will be described later on. So Yogamaya's potency, power, is exhibited in this pastime, being empowered, ultimately empowered by Krishna, ordered by Krishna. Yogamaya is, and when you think about it, Balaram is the first expansion of Krishna, an equal in potency. So how potent must Yogamaya be that she's able to transfer Lord Balaram, who's the first, a full expansion of Krishna himself, to the womb of Rohini, so that he can then perform the pastimes of being Krishna's elder brother in Vrindavan, in Gokul. So these extraordinary circumstances and this extraordinary transfer of Lord Balaram to the womb of Rohini illustrates the potency and the power of Yogamaya, Krishna's internal or spiritual potency. Right? Just as in the material realm, everybody is trapped or captured by the influence of the Mahamaya, that illusion, that conception that I am this body, and that which is related to my body is mine. Aham mameti, I and mine. This is the bewildering impact of the Mahamaya. But similarly, in the spiritual world, the affairs of the spiritual realm are all managed and controlled by the influence of Yogamaya. And under that influence, then, all of the transcendental activities of the spiritual realm manifest, even in apparently in the so-called material world. Why we revere and worship the holy Dham, Vrindavan, and other places where the Lord appears, because in that location, the influence of the material world, even though it looks the same, the influence of the material world is not present. And everything is under the influence of Yogamaya. And the impressions, the samskaras, the vibration, if you like, of the spiritual engagement remains and makes those places especially spiritually potent. So it's interesting that Prabhupada mentions that the last statement that Prabhupada makes in the purport is that let's read it. Make sure I get it right. The word yoga nidra is significant. Right? Garbhe pranite devakya rohinim yoga nidraya aho visramsito gabo iti pora vichukrushuhu. Yeah. So Garbhe pranite devakya rohinim yoga nidraya. So Prabhupada says here, the word yoga nidra is significant. When one is spiritually reconnected through self-realization, one regards his material life as having been like a dream. Then Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, text 69. Yanisha savabhutanam. What is night for all living entities, right? Nisha here means night. Tasyam jargarti samyami. So for the self-controlled, right? Samyami means those who control the self. It's a time of awakening. Right? So the night is for everybody a time of sleeping. But that's the time of awakening for the yogis, especially for the bhakti yogis. I was talking to one of my friends who's a Uber driver. He says he goes to bed early, wakes up at 3:30, then hops into his Uber and then takes people home from the clubs, the parties. And he's very busy at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Then he goes home and chants his rounds. I'm not suggesting that we all become Uber drivers and go at Mongalati, go and pick up customers, by the way. But interesting, it illustrates this point. Night for the conditioned souls is a time of awakening for the devotees. They go to bed early, wake up early. I was reading in one of Prabhupada's lectures the other day. Prabhupada was saying, one should chant one's japa in the Brahma Muhurta, right? Because that's the quietest, most peaceful time of the day, right? That's why the devotees rise early, because at that time of the day the mind is naturally calm, right? And so then spiritual practice, study, meditation, contemplation, reflection, these activities at that time of the day are less likely to be disturbed by extraneous thoughts, actions, events. So it's interesting, isn't it, that the yoga maya Prabhupada describes here as yoga nidra, right? Yoga nidra. And we want to enter, ultimately we want to enter into that yoga nidra. Is that right? We want to be under the influence of the yoga maya and be under the influence of that state where our material life is like a dream and our spiritual life becomes reality. Right? That's really where we need to move. Otherwise we stay under the influence of the material energy, but we want to be under the influence of the spiritual energy. And we know when we're under the influence of the spiritual energy, then all sorts of magical things can happen. Right? Even we're not aware of what we're doing ourselves. But somehow by Krishna's arrangement, the devotees are able to achieve and to experience and be successful in their spiritual life such that the activities of our material existence are no longer influential. Material life is but a dream. And so for the time of awakening for the samyami is darkness for the materialists, right? When we tell them, we wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's the time of day that they're going home and going to bed. And so when they hear about what the devotees are doing, no meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, no illicit sex, they're aghast. What do you do for fun? Right? All the things that we do for fun, you don't do. And you like to chant and study, reflect, contemplation. These are very difficult. These are actually very difficult concepts for people to grasp because they're always being pushed by the Mahamaya. Right? Push, vacho vegam, manasakroda vegam, jiva vegam, udara pasta vegam. Whereas if one's under the if one's under the influence of the yoga maya, then these pushings cease to exist, or they're reduced to the point where they're no longer irresistible, but they're resistible, right? What's that? Vishaya vinivartante. What's the next? Nirahara viharasya, is it? Yeah. It's not that the devotees don't feel the pushings of the material energy, right? But because the devotee is experiencing a higher taste under the influence of the yoga maya, yoga nidra, that spiritual engagement is fully consuming, fully absorbing. And so, because of that absorption in the yoga maya, the Mahamaya influence is at a distance. Okay, off to school, boys and girls. Huh? No school? Tomorrow? Okay, good. Haribol. Yati Haribol. May you have a very successful year. But you have to come and visit Radha Ballabha every day, not just one day at the beginning of the year. That's illustrated by, this Bhagavat Saptaha, which, by the way, Prabhupada says completely bogus. By the way, just, look up Bhagavat Saptaha in the Veda base and see how many times Prabhupada encourages it. I don't think he does, somehow or other. But 7 days, what does that 7 days represent? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? And then have a guess what? You start again, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And you do it all of the time. That's what that illustrates. The Bhagavatam is not something that you just go and enjoy like a party, dress up and, enjoy and then forget about it, but rather something you do every day. The discussion of the Bhagavatam is some Nitya Bhagavata Sevaya, right? Nitya. And the 7 days represent the 7 days of the week, and that goes on in continuum, right? So, this, interesting, Prabhupada explains, here's the influence of the Mahamaya. Party all night, go to sleep at the Brahma Muhurta. Right? And the opposite, by which one can be elevated out of the material world and into the spiritual world, is go to bed early, wake up early, and then use that part of the day for japa, for dhyana. Is it dhyana? Svadhyaya, the study of scripture, for meditation, for contemplation, for reflection, so that one's activities throughout the rest of the day are sheltered by the yoga maya, yoga nidra. And that yoga nidra where material life becomes a dream and spiritual life becomes reality. So, that yoga nidra or that yoga maya potency energy is available ultimately for anyone who wants to take shelter of it. And of course that's the devotees. The devotees take shelter of the spiritual energy by controlling one's existence through regulation. This is how we do it. Sankhya purvakana magana natibi kalavasani krito. Nidrahara vihara kadi vijito chatyanta samohito. Vande rupa sanatano raghuyago sri jiva gopalako. So regulation, effectively. You know, Prabhupada was extraordinarily regulated. You know, if we were to follow Prabhupada's program, we'd be Paramahamsas too. And you see that in the descriptions of Satsvarup Maharaj, Jamuna, Mukunda, you know, others who spent time with Srila Prabhupada. Wherever Prabhupada was, he would rise early in the morning, very early, 1 o'clock, sometimes even midnight, after having rested only for a couple of hours, effectively. But then he would translate 2 or 3 hours of translation. Then he would chant. And there are some really intriguing descriptions of Prabhupada's morning program in Jamuna's biography, or autobiography, I guess. And where Jamuna would rise early at the same time as Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada would acknowledge the fact that she was there, and he would just continue his chanting. And we can see that in a way that Srila Prabhupada was totally absorbed in all of his preaching activities, in all of his sadhana activities, in all of his writing and printing. I was talking to Yadabar the other day, and Yadabar said, I was a filmmaker. Now I'm selling films. And it struck me how much Yadabar is just absorbed in his preaching through that medium especially. We went to, I've forgotten the devotee's name. He's a disciple of Radhanath Swami, and he's from Amritsar, lives over in South Melbourne. His daughter is the same age as Gopika. What's his name? Vasudev Prakash? Vasudev Sankarshan. Yeah, Sankarshan. Yep. Anyway, we had lunch at his place. Then somehow we got talking about the Lord Nityananda, the Lord Nrsimhadev movie. No? And I had to drive down to Waratah Bay for the Bhakti Riksha retreat. And Yadabar said, yeah, let's watch a bit of the movie. And I'm thinking, oh Anyway, we ended up watching 15 minutes of the Śrīmad movie. But absorbed. He's absorbed in his preaching and in using the medium of sound and image and using basically material ingredients, putting them all together to present, so it ceases to be material and it becomes purely spiritual. Right? So you can see in elevated devotees, that's their meditation, Prabhupada's meditation. And I told this story before, but it's a really nice story. When Prabhupada went to the Cistercian monks' monastery, and the head of the monastery asked Prabhupada, "What's your meditation?" Right? And Prabhupada said, writing my books. But of course, writing is just the beginning in one sense, because after that come so many other activities, and eventually it comes to the point of selling, right? Which Prabhupada did. Right? Prabhupada went out on the street and sold books. And when people see the devotees selling things, they think, oh, they're salesmen. Even sometimes we think we're salesmen. Right? But actually it's transcendental distribution of knowledge. That's really what's happening. Right? Purely on the spiritual platform, not on the material platform, but on the spiritual platform. And so, with that deep engagement in devotional service, especially Harinam and book distribution, these activities are really the spirit of what we do in devotional service. Of course, there are other things, no doubt. But the real, like there's the tip of the arrow. So the tip of the arrow is the book distribution, is the Harinam. And engagement in those activities takes one out of the material world. So we're deeply then absorbed in Yoga Nidra, or yoga under the influence of Yoga Maya. And we can see in Prabhupada's example, that meant rising early. Taking advantage of those hours of the day where the materialists, ya nisha sarvabhutanam, right? Night time for everybody, sarvabhutanam, right? Sarvabhuta. But not for the samyami, the self-controlled. That's the jagarti, right? Jagarti means time to wake up. That's time to wake up. It's time to go to bed for the materialistic, but it's time for the devotees to wake up and engage in spiritual practice, so that we can also then be we can also be moved around by Yoga Maya, not the Mahamaya, right? We drive the same cars. We deal with money like others. So it looks like the devotees be engaging in activities like the materialists, but they're not. We're not. Okay, I'm going to finish here. Does anybody have any comments or questions, realizations? You're all samyami, self-controlled, right? Here's Ballab. It's Ballab's first day at high school. Hare Ballab.
Hare Krishna. Thank you
Hare
for
Krishna.
the class.
Yeah.
You spoke about regulation, and I was wondering, oftentimes Maya tests us so many times, even in a single day, and we can have a routine, we can be somewhat regulated, but because of one service comes up or someone needs help, always something feels like it's breaking. So how do we manage that? How can we have a regulation if the routine is always having to change?
How to deal with exceptions.
Yes, because there's exceptions every day.
Yeah, how to deal with exceptions. And how to maintain one's humanity, right?
Yes.
Because you can easily become a robotic, right, person. You can have a robotic. Well, one thing that an early morning program gives us is flexibility. If we've chanted most of our rounds, we've had an opportunity to hear our philosophy and meditate on that deeply, then the ability to deal with exceptional circumstances is it's easier. And as you say, every day will be exceptional, right? They're always going to be. So there's also a need to have a Prabhupada Desh. Is that right? Yeah. You know what Prabhupada Desh means? Means a place given by the spiritual master to render service. Right? And so that you know what your main purpose is. There might, there'll be opportunities to do this or do that or do the other thing, but we know what our main engagement should be. And that Prabhupada Desh may be given by Krishna as the guru, right? Or is given by the spiritual master, so that one then follows the order of the spiritual master, just like Prabhupada was travelling across India, and very often most often by train, and the Prabhupada's party arrived in New Delhi, and Prabhupada told Jamuna and Guru Das and Banu, then Brahmachari, I want you to stop here and open a temple. Right? Yeah. Now that's unlike that's an illustration of the principle. It's something that's unlikely to happen to us. Right? And over time it might manifest, it might reveal itself where we should dedicate our lives to the service of Krishna and the service of the spiritual master. And then stick at it. Right? Is that right, Bhakti Lita? You don't know? Oh, could have fooled me. Huh? What do you think, Gopa? Yeah.
So is the idea of a Prabhupada Desh?
Prabhupada Desh. Yeah, what it means literally is the Desh means place, Datta means to give. In Sanskrit, this is Bengali. I think in Sanskrit it's Dan. You know what's given by Prabhu Datta. What is given to you by your Prabhu? That could be Radha Ballabha, it could be Prabhupada, it could be your spiritual master, it could be circumstance. You know, sometimes we find ourselves in a circumstance and we know that's it, because it's an arrangement created by Krishna. And so we recognize the Prabhu, Krishna, in that arrangement.
So the idea is that all services within this place that's given take priority over everything else for us.
There's another quote, and I attribute it to Prabhupada, but maybe I made it up myself. It's everybody's servant is nobody's servant. Right? So if you run around helping everybody and not looking after yourself, not very practical. Right? So that's why having one's service clearly understood in one's mind, and it might take a little while to find that. Right? But that's broadly a principle. And I'm just saying, you know, this is not a personal, you know, instruction to you, but just broadly, that's how we manage things. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a broad principle. Identify Krishna's representative, stay in their association and follow their instructions. Nitai.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. You mentioned about the dream, like...
The dream?
The dream.
We're living the dream.
We're living the dream. So how much should we take this dream seriously?
Again, service. We want the dream to be Yoga Nidra, not Mahamaya. And so, under the influence of Yoga Maya, we take our service pretty seriously, right? Prabhupada took the instructions of Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur to heart, right? And that's a symptom of a devotee. They take Krishna's directions and they take the order of the spiritual master as sacrosanct. Right? What does sacrosanct mean? Oh yes, looks like the devotees had to evacuate the farm yesterday, but it looks like that fire might be under control. Sacrosanct is an adjective meaning so sacred or holy that it must not be violated or interfered with. Treated as too important or special to be changed, criticised or questioned. For example, this is perplexity is telling me, right? This is interesting. In our tradition, the morning Mongol Aarti time is sacrosanct. Perplexity is very good at getting to know you, then it starts treating you like a devotee even though you're not. Nothing else is scheduled then. Yeah? So, you know, it's very often in a broader framework, you know, in the framework of existence, of life. Right? So it has to be, and that's why it's interesting. One of the factors that disturbs bhakti is niyamagraha, which is either rejecting the rules and regulations or being too fanatically attached to rules and regulations. Haribol, first day at school. Hey? Yep. Are you looking forward to it? Yes. How's it going, Vasudev? Radha. Haribol. You're looking very beautiful today. As always. Yep. So it's interesting, isn't it? Because we're always having to deal with exceptions, right? But there are parts of the day when we need to make sure there are no exceptions, ideally. And if we are able to stick to those, especially early in the morning, those times when we just japa, study, contemplation, reflection, then when the exceptions pop up, we're able to manage them. And then return to what we're supposed to be doing. Right? Are you still working in security? Are you still working in security? Okay. What do you do most of the time? Yeah, stand around looking at things, right? Highly exciting work, right? Well, except when the weird stuff happens, right? And then you jump to attention. But then when the weird stuff's over, then you go back to just looking. Right? And so are trained, in one sense, to deal with exceptions. That's what you're trained to do. So we need to be trained how to deal with exceptions and how to be exceptional in those circumstances, right? That's why finding our Prabhu Dasadesh is important. Otherwise, what happens is, what a dangerous thing is, you can just keep looking and looking and looking and never find it. And then just become like a tourist devotee. Right? That's okay if your service is book distribution and you're just going around doing books wherever you go. Right? But one of the hardest things is to find, you know, where am I going to settle? Where do I do that service that's pleasing to Krishna, that's pleasing to the spiritual master, that's ultimately pleasing to the devotees? And then working cooperatively with everybody. This is the hardest thing. Settling down and then working cooperatively with the rest of the devotees. If you can do that, you're a champion. Huh? And if you can't do that, well, don't be surprised, it's not easy. Yeah. And if you can, that's actually, you're fortunate, very fortunate. Hare Krishna. Kantra Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki jai, Mahaprasadam ki jai.